Well, hey gang, we're going to spend the next few minutes with old dog catcher here, the 2003 VY Commodore. He had a bit of a starting issue the other day, left someone stranded, and so we did a quick roadside diagnosis, a very easy fix to get at home, and now it seems to be doing fine, but given the person who drives this is someone who shouldn't get stranded anywhere, we're going to do some preemptive maintenance and replace the starter motor. So I'll show you what happened, how we diagnosed it, and then we'll get into replacing that starter motor. So I got the call the other day that the car wasn't starting. We ran through a few things over the phone, some real basic things like making sure it was in park, because it won't start if it's not in park or neutral. Got them to bang on the battery terminals and things like that. But we knew it wasn't battery because it had been running a minute before. They'd literally just turned it off to pick something up quickly, got back in the car, and it wouldn't start. So they came in, and this is what they got. All the lights, windows and everything worked, full power, but nothing when they turned the key. So, kind of indicated that it wasn't power, and we headed on over and had a look at a few things. So in this particular case, we were confident it wasn't power, but if it had been left alone for a day or two and then had the symptom, you may not be as sure. The things we checked were the power windows were working fine. They weren't lagging or slowing down. The lights and everything was good. And usually if you've got power windows, then you'd at least get a click or a single turnover or something from the starter motor, because there's some kind of power there, enough to drive the windows, but we were getting absolutely nothing. So that kind of narrows it down to a couple of different things. It could either be the power to the starter motor or the starter motor itself. Always look at the simple things first. So the first thing we looked at was the relay, which in this car is under here. And looking at this map, it's this one here, start relay, which translates to this one here. So we had a look, checked our number, looked for another one with the same number. There's a couple there. We switched them over and still nothing. Another thing you can do is you can listen carefully, and these will actually click when you turn the key. And these were clicking fine. Both of these were clicking okay. So we're pretty comfortable it wasn't the relay. And so the next one is the starter itself. So on this car, the starter is just under there. I'm going to send the phone down without me, see if you can see it. There we go. There's our starter solenoid and motor right there. So the next easiest thing to do is just grab a hammer and give it a bang. So I gave that a good old tap with a hammer, and guess what? We came back over to the key, gave it a crank, and she started right up. Another way you could test the starter, if you can get under the car, you can actually jump the starter itself by running power direct from the battery down to the starter motor and giving it a crank that way, and bypassing all of the relays and ignition and everything. And if you get a crank out of it that way, then you know you've got an electrical problem. If you don't, then you've absolutely confirmed it was the starter. But for us, we gave it a big old tap and it started again. So that was great. Got it home and it's actually been fine ever since, no problems at all. But given a starter motor is about 100, 150 bucks, and it should be, touch wood, fingers crossed, very quick and easy to change, we're actually going to go ahead and change it because the person who drives this car is someone that we don't want getting stranded. So we're going to get this car up on some ramps. I'll get under there, I'll show you the starter, and we'll change it out. So here we are up on the ramps. Let's take a look underneath. All right. So here's our starter motor right there, just above the front steering rack. Right in there. And we've got a couple of mounting bolts under there. We've got some wires and stuff back here with some bolts holding them on. We should just be able to undo all those, pull that all out, throw the new one in, be good to go. So before we do anything else, let's have a look at the part we got. Here it is. I want to make sure we do have the right one, that it at least looks the part before we start pulling the old one out. Sucks to get in there, pull the old one out, and then realise you don't have anything to go back in its place, and then you just spent all that time for nothing, and then have to even go ahead and put the old one back in. So here's what we've got. From what we saw underneath, this looks about right. These are those bottom mounting bolts, or holes for the mounting bolts, so that looks good. All looks the right shape, everything's in the right position. So I'd say it's worth pulling the old one out. These would be probably 200 to 250 for an OEM one. You can get them online for between 100, 150 for aftermarket, and I got very lucky and my local had one fairly cheap. Pick up, same day, no problem. So with a warranty, just around the corner, much better than online, so I'll pay the extra 15, 20 bucks compared to the online one. And here it is in my hot little hands. So the first thing we want to do is disconnect the battery. You should be doing that anytime you're working on anything electrical on your car. However, on this job, it's absolutely imperative because we're going to be working on full power positive and negative terminals right next to each other. So super easy to short circuit those terminals. So let's get this battery undone. So there you go, undone and out of the way, safe to work on things. So the way it works in here, you've got your positive wire, that's the big thick wire coming in there to the top terminal. And then this is our solenoid wire, the little short one, or little thin one I should say, coming in there. And then your positive power out there and onto the housing of the starter motor. And then the starter motor is mounted to the body of the car, so that's your negative connection. So what we've got to do is undo this main wire here coming in, that bolt right there, and unplug that one, and then undo these two, and it should all come out. So here we go on the new part, just to confirm. Here's our positive attachment, goes into our solenoid. This is our little relay attachment, and then our main power out of the solenoid into the starter motor. And then, as I say, the negative comes through the body of the starter motor back to the body of the car. And that's how a circuit works. So I'm trying very hard to do this in a way that you can see, but probably not. Oh, can you see under there? There we go. Nice and loose, that's helpful. Not particularly hard now, but there you go. We've got that undone. Now for these two bolts. So we're just going to take this one out as well. So I took that one out. It was just holding this little cover plate thing. It's just a piece of plastic plate in. So anyone doing this particular car, that's got to come out too. And there you go. You can see the starter right onto the flywheel there, and now we'll take these bolts out. For those of you that were interested in this particular car, or the sort of VT to VY series Commodores, this is a 15mm bolt, this one. The little one that was holding that plate on, that was a 10mm, and the nut that was holding the electrical connector on, that was a 13mm. Undoing the second bolt now. And of course, once we take this bolt out, everything's going to want to fall out. There it goes. There's the two bolts out. Now we can move everything back and out of the way, hopefully. Try not to get dust in our eyes. And there we go. Old starter motor out. So here's our old bolts going into our new starter motor, and they kind of feel like they might be an interference fit, or the wrong size, or the wrong bolt or something, but I believe it's actually to help with mounting, and I think we're gonna bang these in first, and then we put them all up in together. So there we go. Sorry, couldn't film it because I needed too many hands, but I've whacked these down with a hammer. They went in nice and easy and snug. They're tight enough that they won't fall out whilst you're trying to remount the starter, but they're loose enough that they'll still turn quite easily. So now let's try throw this back in. Alright, so here's our new motor. We'll finagle it back into place as best we can. There we go. And then get those bolts to seat in their holes. There we go. Hold it there awkwardly with one hand. Grab our socket with the other. Just start tightening things down, I hope. Feels like it's doing the right thing. Look, I can let go, there's a good sign. Given how those bolts are sitting, I'm gonna go a little bit at a time on each side, just to keep things square. Don't want to do all on one side because it'll start twisting things. All right, so that's that one back into place. Now we'll throw our little cover plate in. There's that one. Now it's just the electrical connectors and we are good to go. Alright, so we're just putting all our wiring back on. There's our little relay wire. Putting our main power back on now. Washer. And the nut. So there we go, all our wiring tightened up, good to go. Now I can reattach the battery and give her a crank. So if everything went to plan, this should now start. There we go. New starter motor working. Now the other thing that I would recommend, and I'm going to do, but I'm not going to do today, but especially since we're doing this for preventative reasons, I'm going to replace this relay as well, just so that we know everything's new and ready to go. I'm not going to buy these from the store because you can get them much cheaper online, so we'll just wait for one of those to come along, but they just simply pull out, just like that, put the new one in, and then you know that's brand new too. Well, there we go, gang. That was pretty easy. Would have been about half an hour if I hadn't have been filming. Took me about an hour to film it as well. And that would save a bunch of money. So we're about 115 bucks into the starter motor. Be a little bit more once we change those relays as well, if you choose to do that. But a shop would probably charge you, I'm guessing, you know, 200, 250 for the part plus a markup, so maybe 300, 350 for that. And then there'd be at least an hour labor, so 100 to 120 there, if not two. Throw the book labor at it. So you could easily be into this for $500 or $600 if you took it to a shop, and we've done it for $115 and about half an hour to an hour of time. So definitely worth doing. One of those easy ones, especially on this car. Bit different on other cars. It's all about how easy it is to get to, but the principle's the same. Starter motors are pretty simple. So before you go and spend big money at the mechanics, check it out for yourself. Have a look online on YouTube, check out your specific car and model and see if it's worth doing yourself. So be smart, everybody. Do your own work where you can, spend your money when you can't, look after your cars and they'll look after you. All right, take care. Catch you on the next one.